Welcome. This is Victoria Rumble Room. I'm Robin Adair. With me, as always, my co-host with the most, John Jurisic. And John, for this last month, we've been going pretty crazy on politics. BC election, and then we've been madly following the outfall of Donald Trump repeating as presidential winner and returning to the White House. A lot of Canadians are in a bit of shock. Some are in dismay. Some are just wondering what's going to happen next. We're trying to offer some clarifications on that. And, there are suggestions that the Republicans could bring in 10% trade tariffs to exports from Canada to the U.S. That would be really tough on our economy. And so very bad news if that was to happen.
There's always some hope, with this guy that maybe after getting elected, maybe after getting into office, there'll be some rationalization, some sort of common sense. So far, it hasn't proved true. And in fact, with the most recent appointments to cabinet, it most certainly will not prove true. In fact, both the Democrats and Republicans appear to be moving to more of an America First theme when it comes to trade. We managed to renew our North American Free Trade Agreement the last time Trump was in office. Whew! Here's what Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland said about dealing with the Donald.
Canada looks forward to working in close partnership with our American friends and neighbors. I also want to say, I know that a lot of Canadians are anxious. And I want to say with utter sincerity and conviction to Canadians that Canada will be absolutely fine.
Hey, we'll cross our fingers, won't we, that the Trudeau government can have a reasonable discussion when Trump takes office. However, if I was to bet, I'd say Trump's personal dislike for Trudeau remains a big problem. And maybe this won't get better unless there's a change in government in Canada, a change in leader. But you never know. Maybe Pierre Poilievre may have no better luck.
It's really hard to say, and there are appointments being made. We have a new Secretary of State that's been announced, Marco Rubio. So it's going to be a team approach from Trump to a point, but he always pulls the lever. He's the man at the top of the totem pole, so it'll be very interesting to see how they proceed. And, these discussions are getting lots of our viewer mail, John. We were getting lots and lots of feedback, some of it not particularly flattering, calling us idiots and liberals and all kinds of things, which, well, I don't know. We're trying our best on this show. And we've certainly had some rocky times. And we're having more of them in terms of how people feel about the outcome of Donald Trump. And here's a sampling of some of the things that are being said that are actually kind of pro-Trump. People are saying, time that you were balanced on this show and talked about some of the things that we think. So Chris writes us, it's tough for liberals and Democrats, but for the rest of us, it's about bloody time.
All right, look, we call this the Rumble Room for a reason. We're going to tell our opinion. And you can write to us about yours, and we will read it on air. How about that? Some viewers, they don't like Trump's style, but they still like his message. A lot of folks like that. Love it that Trump's back. Don't like his personality, but like Republican policies and what they stand for.
That's what Kim had to say about the matter, and we do encourage people to write in. Doesn't mean we'll put you guaranteed on the air, but if it's an interesting note, you tweak our interest, we'll put it on the show. And shifting our focus now to BC politics again for a moment. The NDP hang on to government. They are going to be the party in power as we move into 2025. There will be a budget. After that, who knows? How long will this EB mandate last? Anyone's guess. We'll see. I suspect it's going to go for a while. I think it's going to take the BC Conservatives time to build their team, build their message, and be ready, perhaps, down the road to actually win an election, but we'll have to see how that goes. And in the meantime, it's interesting to see that other forms of government, and I'm talking now about municipalities, they're not necessarily distancing themselves from controversy. The EB government got into so much hot water by taking some very strong and strident steps. We're seeing some of the same now from some of our civic leaders.
This notion that politicians should try to listen to us, how noble, how novel. We elect them, and then they listen to their constituency. Yes, I see that Saanich is taking a step back. Good for you. From single lane traffic on main connectors like Mackenzie Road. People still need to get across town, and if mayors and councils don't listen to the public, they'll be in hot water if they want to get reelected. That's basic common sense 101.
Absolutely. If we don't have good routes into our cities, if we don't have room for transport of our goods and services and the people that you want to come down and shop, you're dead in the water. And certainly the Victoria Downtown Business Association is blowing the whistle on this. Jeff Bray has spoken out talking about the fact there is a lot of parking downtown. It is easy to access. Business people want people to come downtown, especially during Christmas season. So we decided we better get some more information from Jeff Bray.
Absolutely. And we've heard from our members the last couple of years, the number one complaint they get from their members is actually drivability in downtown. So, we really think that the city needs to recognize that as a regional downtown, we rely on people coming from throughout the region into downtown. And the predominant way is still, and will be for many years to come, the private automobile. We support bike lanes, we support transit infrastructure, but not at the expense of vehicular capacity.
And you're concerned there's a myth that there's no parking downtown.
We have over 7,000 parking spots in the downtown core between the city parkades, on-street parking, and then, parkades like Robbins and the Bay Center. And if you look on the downtownvictoria.ca website, you'll see where all the parkades are located. Any one of them is within 2 blocks of where people are going to go, which is no different than when you park at Costco or you park at the mall.
Hey, I love to shop downtown. I frankly love to shop in Saanich. I love to shop all over the place. If I can get there, oh my God, if I can take my goods back home, civic leaders have decided they can push people out of their cars and pressure them to take a bus or ride a bike. I love biking. I'm addicted to biking, but don't tell me to go to work on a bike. Don't tell me to go to shop on a bike, and don't tell me to ride in the rain on a bike. Come on, you people. This simply isn't going to happen in our lifetime. You and I have debated numerous times over this woke movement, and frankly, I'm not, I am not as sort of convinced that this is around, but this is pure woke, okay? You can't get us changing our ways and trying to live in a politically correct Trumpian utopia. People are getting sick of this, Robin.
Well, I don't think there's any question there's a woke movement out there, whatever you want to label it. There's a sort of a politically correct way we're supposed to behave, politically correct words we should use, terms we should use.
And the way we should think.
The way we should think. And I think that it's out there and it needs to be called out, and people have to decide whether they're going to buy into it. And somebody who's not buying into it is Ryan Painter. Ryan Painter used to be a longtime New Democrat, and he decided they were no longer speaking for him, so he decided to change teams, join the Conservatives, worked on this last BC Conservative campaign, and his big objective is to build a more open society with more freedom, and he wants that for both British Columbia and Canada. And wouldn't you know, Ryan Painter is standing by. Let's zoom him in.
Joining us once again in the Victoria Rumble Room, a podcaster and recent BC Conservative campaigner, Ryan Painter. So great to have you back with us.
Lovely to be here, John and Robin. Let's rumble.
Attaboy. Right on. Okay, what is the atmosphere in Conservative land right now, Ryan? We had Rich Coleman on the show recently, who says John Rustad's new team needs staff and experience in the ledge to become effective. I get that. Perhaps government in the future. What do you think? Is this building time right now?
It is building time. I mean, look, we've come through the election, the week and a half of ballot counting, and everybody's sweating, waiting to see what was going to happen. Was it going to be Wanda Fuka-Malahat that put us over the top, and then Surrey Guildford, and now we have 2 judicial recounts coming in Surrey Guildford and in Kelowna Centre. But for all intents and purposes, we know we have a government. We know that's a very slim majority at 47 seats. And so the Conservatives have building time now. The time is to focus. The election is over. The results are the results. And now we move forward and we build. And I'm going to tell you, the atmosphere, the attitude for people who I've talked to, people are excited. People are really ready to get going. They're ready to get moving. They are ready to take their seats. They're ready to start building riding associations. I mean, I'm actually talking with folks across the province who say, what do we do to get ready for the next election? Which I actually think is the right way to think about this, because you don't know when it's going to come. I mean, we're in a bare majority government here, so it could possibly fall anytime in the next 12, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, who knows? So yes, the party does need to build. There's a lot of energy around that. And I think that you're going to see the next, I would say 4 or 5 months, a lot of work, a lot of energy and effort going into getting this team, legislature, question period, committee ready.
You know, it's interesting. I think the political gods have done John Rustad and company a favor by taking him from 2 to 44 seats, which is a minor miracle. I mean, I realize Kevin Falcon had a lot to do with it, but still, to go that far and to get to this position where not only the official opposition, but just an inch away from the numbers needed to be government. And yet, John Rustad says, well, you know, we're going to take the first opportunity to knock this government off and to bring them down in the House. And, you know, I realize that saber waving that you like to see sometimes from your leader, but I think this is valuable time for the BC Conservatives. They need this time. You've got a lot of rookies, people finding the washroom at the legislature is going to take some time for some of these people. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and you want to be in the right position to be successful. So if it is 2 or 3 years, that can't be seen as a bad thing. I was told that they brought in a lot of folks from other provinces, from Alberta and Saskatchewan, to come in and help with this campaign, and that there was a shortage, at least in the short term, of local people to work for this government. The BC United folk left. Maybe some of them will come back. I mean, do you think there's going to be a bit of a gap here in terms of talent and people to work for John Rustad and company?
I don't think so, Robin. I think there's a lot of talent in this province. And look, we went through what was definitely a challenging campaign. There was a lot of division. There was a lot of negativity. Certainly, I think coming more from the David Eby side than anything else. I think our side was much more focused on trying to solve problems, and David Eby was more focused on just telling lies to get reelected. But I think
I sound like we're back on the campaign. We sound like we're back on the campaign.
It does. You're
it's
right.
It's a campaign forever, I guess.
You're right. You're right. But I think what we're going to have happen here, Robin, is I think we're going to see the party reach out to folks to say, okay, let's build that team that can get us where we are now into government. And we're not that far away. Right, we won 44 seats. We had previously had nothing. I mean, it was a party that was at 2%. 18, 19 months ago, and now at 44 seats and very nearly formed government. So I think what that means is going across, building teams, looking at folks who may have not been engaged with recently and saying, okay, look, now's the time to step up. We have a real big opportunity here to form a strong, united, focused opposition in the Conservative Party here. So let's do that. And I think that does mean reaching out to folks and having those important conversations. And I'm sure they're happening. I'm probably not privy to most of them, but I would be surprised if those conversations, those important outreach, olive branch things weren't already happening.
So, Ryan, a few folks understand or have experienced the back room of politics. There's the candidate, and in actuality, maybe dozens of people that are helping get people elected or trying to get elected. So I always like to ask people's opinions of what happened in the back rooms. You worked on a campaign. From your vantage point, what was the best part of being involved? And what was the hardest and sometimes most challenging piece that you encountered and experienced?
So I will say the best part in being involved, and this is going to sound like a canned response, but I promise you it's not. The best part about being involved is getting on the doorstep and talking to people. It really is. I mean, when I got involved in politics, I was 16 years old. I am 40 now, so I have been doing this game for me for a long time. And I got started. I mean, putting in signs was one of the first things I did, but door knocking very quickly after. And I love talking to people about politics and finding out what is it that they need to feel like their government cares, or to feel like they're engaged, or that their life is being made better, or that problems are being solved. And that's the best part for me, is getting on the doorstep with the candidate, without the candidate, and just having those conversations. It doesn't mean we're going to agree, and certainly you get to that doorstep and you get some people who really don't agree with you, and you take that heat. That's part of what it's about. But that's always for me, why I keep doing this year after year. My wife asked me, why do you keep doing this, Ryan? And I just say, well, because I love people and I love talking to people. I mean, that's why I do it. So for me, that will always be the best part of any campaign. In terms of the worst part, look, I said it just a few minutes ago, this is one of the most negative campaigns I've ever been involved in. My candidate was getting death threats, and that was really challenging. He was worried about
social media is a big part of that, eh? Social media is a big part of this election.
It absolutely is. This was a huge election where social media was driving so much of the narrative, and you had false stories being put out there. You had half truths, full lies being made up out of whole cloth and being put on people. And the challenge is, how do you respond to that? Because from a communications perspective, when you respond, you give some kind of legitimacy to the claim. So how do you manage that? How do you deal with that? And for the candidate that I was working for, it was brutal. It was really brutal. It took a personal emotional toll on him, of course, on me as well. And it wasn't just us up in the north. It was happening all over the province. And I think that just degrades our politics. It degrades our ability to have those difficult conversations and to disagree. I really wish we would have less of this negativity. I've never really been a negativity in politics kind of guy. I don't like it. I don't feel like it gets us anywhere. I'm not above throwing punches. John Horgan always used to say, politics, keep your elbows up. And I couldn't agree more, but that doesn't necessarily mean striking out with lies, falsehoods, and all that. So for me, that was really the worst part of this election campaign.
Of course, Justin Trudeau used to talk about he was going to bring happy ways to politics, and we know how that's gone.
Sunny ways, remember, sunny ways. And
sunny ways. Sunny ways, even better than happy ways.
Yeah.
So looking very promising and very positive at the moment is our premier, who I think is very relieved to have his mandate. And he's saying, well, I'm going to work across the aisle. I'm going to reach out. And he's promising more doctors. He's promising safer streets. He's talking about affordable housing as if these were all new ideas. And he is promising he is going to deliver. And that's, I think, encouraging for people who say, well, you've been making lots of promises on these things, and where's the delivery? So he really doesn't have a lot of time now. He's got to get some of these things out and show, okay, now I've actually done this because here it is. And I think that's going to be a change. And we also have a lot of policies that are going forward that maybe kind of fly in the face of what he's saying at the end of this election campaign, where he's saying, I'm going to start to listen, because there are things in motion now that have been basically implemented on the public, and the public's not really on side, and yet it's been sort of, okay, this is what we're going to do. It was on a number of fronts, but we're going to look at education, which is something I know with your background as a school board chair, you know a lot about, and we're talking about this new policy going forward, and I would call it a controversial policy, and it's in the education system on grading from K to 9, where they're moving away from the letter system, getting an A, a B, a C, or a D, and moving to this proficiency scale, where you get a designation like you are emerging, you are a proficient student, you are extending, whatever that may mean. And well, you were a school board chair. I'm sure you must have heard about this model. What do you make of all this?
So, Robin, I was at the board when this first came up. Now I recall when it came up as a pilot, something that they wanted to test out and try out to move away from a grading system that they felt in some respects was creating perhaps a punitive culture, a culture of comparison that I think they weren't looking for. And so they wanted to go to something that was a little bit more explanatory of how a person is doing it. I think it's nuts. I came out against it. When I heard that it went province-wide, I said, this is absolutely just bonkers world. I mean, for me, I always go, and I tried to do this as best I could when I was a school board trustee and the chair of the board here. What do the students need? What do they want? What am I hearing from them? Not what the parents think, not what the teachers and the adults in the room think. What do the students need? And if we can combine some thoughts, best practices, ideas, then we can come up with something good. And when something like this flies in the face of what the students clearly want, I think it needs a major rethink. But here's the other thing. How do we know how effective the teaching material is with something like this? And that's also a real serious concern for me, because if kids are just getting emergent or proficient or extending, we don't know the impact of the teaching material. We don't know, like, what are they absorbing? What are they retaining? What are they learning? How are they carrying that forward? And then how are they being prepared for post-secondary if they decide to go to trade school or university where things are much harder? Or even if they don't, if they go out into the real world and work, where you are actually judged based on the work that you do. And like your judgment is you don't pass a 3-month probation, right? This stuff matters. And I feel like this new system just sets up kids for mediocrity and failure when they leave school. It's really frustrating for me because that's not why I got into education.
Well, they all get a blue ribbon, and you get an A for that answer, I think, Ryan.
That was fabulous. Let's get you off the education track, although I'd love to remain there considering the vast experience you have. But you are now politically experienced. You are now a political pundit. How can we not ask you the following question? So clearly with a huge conservative opposition, EP government doesn't have a lot of wiggle room here to passing bills and the budget. Talking amongst your conservative friends and the folks within your political environment, are they thinking this will be a short mandate, not 4 years? What do you think? Are we back to the polls in a couple of years, maybe?
I'll tell you what I think and what I feel, what I've heard from others, and I'll kind of try to blend it all into a coherent answer here. I'll say, for one thing, people really understand that voters hate elections. They just hate them. And we know they do, because we're bothering them a lot. We're calling them, we're knocking on their doors. They're inundated with messaging. Elections aren't cheap, right? Like, we know they don't like them. And thank goodness we still have people who get out and vote, because it is extremely important to do. But we know people don't want to go to an election right away, right? So I think there has to be a real focus on how do we get results for people in this next session. And I liked what what John Rustad said at his press conference yesterday, where he said, look, where there are items where the government comes forward and we have alignment, we'll work with them. But if they're coming forward and they're moving on the same path that they've been going on, where crime has increased, housing prices have increased, certain communities' poverty has not gotten any better, traffic is worse than it's ever been, we're having all kinds of issues with drugs and homelessness and all these other issues. People can't afford costs of groceries and taxes and all this stuff. If they continue on that path, we're going to oppose them. And look, the opposition is their role. They are the government in waiting, but they are the official opposition. So their job is to oppose. And I actually always liked what Jack Layton used to say back when he was leader of the federal NDP. Our job isn't just to oppose, it is to propose. And I agree with that. I mean, I do think that the opposition also has an obligation to put things in the window for folks to look at. So I think we'll see that as well. There will be private members' bills and things coming forward that I think will be in the shop front for folks to look at. But I think this opposition is going to have an important role to hold the government's feet to the fire. And certainly if the Green Party looks at aligning with the provincial government to give them a speaker and other things like that, I think they're only going to have one opposition, which is going to be the Conservatives. So we're going to have to be the ones really to step up to the plate.
Ryan Painter, such a colorful guy. And how colorful, you may well ask? Well, he's such a guy that I'm going away for a short holiday, so we've decided to bring him back as a special guest host. This is all going to happen in a few weeks' time. He's going to be joining John Jurisic in the Rumble Room. Also, Mark McDonald from the Business Examiner. It's going to be one lively punch-out. I'll be safely somewhere on a beach, so I won't have to listen to all of that. But, Johnny, life will never be the same for you.
We're going to rumble out. We're going to talk politics. We're going to argue. We're going to fight. We're going to throw eggs, all from the safety of our offices. I can't hardly wait to duke it out with those folks. We love to mix it up with people who have strong opinions. We love to listen to and read the opinions and comments that you're all sending. We want them. We'll believe this is and we believe that this is the style and format that's allowed us to reach 2.4 million cumulative views since we started the Rumble Room 3 years ago. When I say it, it's like, really? That many people have watched? What the hell is going on? Thank you for your support. If you want to follow our show, remember, you can do that on Instagram. You can do that on Twitter. You can do that on Facebook. You can do that on YouTube. And as well, you can do it on Twitter and listen to us on an audio podcast. That's it for me. I may not be woke. I may not be alive. I may not be awake. But don't force me to drive a bike in the rain. Never asleep at the wheel. I'm John Jurisic.
Oh, Johnny. And, I do like to grab the wheel myself once in a while. I'm Robin Adair. And as I hold that wheel and drive steadfastly forward, I also rumble on.